Okay, in this video I'm going to cover how to translate words into math, but specifically how to translate fractions, decimals, and percentages into word problems that have fractions, decimals, and percentages into mathematical sentences. Before I do that, though, I want to talk about the relationship that exists between fractions, decimals, and percents, and I think that might be an easier way to go. So let's start with an example. Let's say you want to know 50% of some number, okay? What's the decimal equivalent of 50%, and what's the fraction equivalent of 50%? Well, whenever you have percentages are based on 100. So that's something to keep in mind. Percentages are based on 100 as a denominator. Let me just write that off to the side. Denominator. There we go. Sorry about the spelling there. So if you were to see 50%, that's the same thing as saying 50 over 100. Okay, you just drop the percentage and then you put the number over 100. And now you have your fraction. And you can actually reduce that fraction too. So 50 over 100, let me go ahead and do it this way. 5 times 10, 10 times 10, that goes away. And now you have 5 divided by 10. That could change into 5 over 2 times 5. That goes away, and you finally end up with 1 over 2 as the reduced fraction. Okay? Now, how do you change, and that's but basically all I did here was I just factored it out until I got down to the simplest numbers or the prime numbers that were left, and that's how you get your smallest fraction. So again, percentages, just divide it by 100 in the denominator, drop that, and then reduce it by factoring. So now how do we get from percentages and fractions to decimals? Okay. What you do is you take the numerator and divide it by the denominator. So if you put that in your calculator, you'd have 1 divided by 2. I'm going to do the long division rather than doing the calculator. Put the decimal point here, if you remember how to do that, and ask yourself, 2 goes into 10 how many times? And the answer is 5, until you get a 0 remainder. So 0.5 would be the answer for 50% changed into decimal form. Okay? Now, let's try that with a decimal. How would I change a decimal, 0.35, into a fraction? Again, remember how you do that. Decimals are also based on 100 as a denominator. Let me just write that in there. So again, you would go ahead and take the number, drop the decimal point, put it over 100, and now go ahead and reduce it to its simplest fraction. And let's go ahead and multiply, factor out 35, and you get 7 times 5. Go ahead and do the same thing with 100, and that would be, what, 10 times 10, or 2 times 2 times 5 times 5. That would be the prime factors. Take out whatever you can in terms of the 1, reduce it, and you get 7 over 20. And that would be the reduced fraction for 35 over 100. How do I change that to a percent? You take the decimal form and you move it to the right 2 spots and add the percentage sign. Okay, so to change from decimals to percentages, take wherever the decimal is, move it 2 spaces to the right, and add your percentage sign. Okay? Now, let's do one more. Let's take 33 over 4, and let's change that to a decimal, and let's change that to a percent. And we're going to use some of the techniques we use back up here, but just in reverse, right? So, remember that we divided the numerator by the denominator to get the decimals back up here, numerator divided by denominator. We can do the same thing here, so let's try that. And ask yourself, 4 goes into 30 how many times? We got 7, but this time we're going to have a remainder. And now you ask yourself, 4 goes into 20 how many times? The answer is 5. And again, I have a 0 remainder. So 3/4 as a decimal is 0.75. And remember how to change the decimal. We just did that to a percentage. Move it 2 to the right. And drop the decimal, add the percentage. And there you go. Okay, I hope that part was helpful, but now let's go ahead and take some words and see if we can translate that into a problem. So the question is, what percent of 50 is 40? Excuse me. So if we're asking for what percent, that's our unknown, isn't it? So we're going to call that x. We don't know what that percentage is. Of, in this particular case, means multiplied. So what percent of 50 is, translate, 40. So essentially what you've done is said 50 times x is equal to 40. Go ahead and now solve that mathematically. Divide both sides by 50, and you get x is equal to 40 divided by 50, which is our fraction. We can change that into 4 times 10 over 5 times 10. That goes away, and you get 4 over 5. And remember that you change that by dividing the numerator by the denominator. 5 goes into 40 how many times? 8 times. You get 40 there. There's my remainder. And again, how do you change a decimal into a percentage? You move the decimal point over 2 times, which would give you 80, and then go ahead and make it a percentage. Okay? That was a quick down and dirty. I hope that was helpful. You can just review those again if you have any questions about how to do that. Okay, good luck.